Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. I'm Kyler Cheatham. This is Bite Size Live, and today I'm doing a little bit of a different format where I allow you to ask me anything. I've been trying this format on TikTok, and it's been really fun in just creating dialogue. And that's kind of my mission here today. And so the goal here is that it doesn't matter what I say, right? It doesn't matter what somebody says beside you at what's best for you and your technology strategy. It's about creating ownership and supporting my mission of making sure that company and the access to get all of the information they need with the influence of kind of that big software machine. So I always give kind of like just a starting point for the conversation. And today, a really hot topic so before we get started, just a few logistics as a reminder. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining, returning. I'm always so grateful and happy to see you and excited to hear from your insights. Wherever you're joining from, I can see feature. So whether that's Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, all of those aggregate right here and we can see them. And I'm actually going to just show them on the stream so you guys can see them too. So you can see that Mick said tuned in from LinkedIn here, and I'd love to hear where you're joining from. You can answer the questions, you can ask questions, you can engage in the conversation as well. So the goal here is just to create kind of a community because not one strategy is going to work for one business that's going to work exactly the same for the other. As much as, as in system integrators want you to think that, there's a difference between a proven strategy and a strategy, right? So let's test that feature and just tell me where you're tuning in from today. And we'll do an icebreaker question of would you rather, this actually came off of my live yesterday, have a system architecture that has siloed data across 10 systems or have one very inflexible core solution. Your thoughts are on that as we get started. So today we're kind of talking about AI readiness. And AI readiness is something that has been a very hot topic in our industry and kind of wading through, are we buying hype or are we buying actual business tools? And that's going to be the biggest question there that we really need to understand. So when we're talking about AI readiness, that's all going to start with data. Many times I walk into a room and people are like, hey, I'm so ready for AI. Our business wants to be on the forefront. We want to remain competitive. Those are all amazing goals. But we have to remember that in order to build something with a strong foundation, we need to hone in on those processes and that data. So, one thing that we need to start with today is looking at your data. I'm curious to hear from the audience. Do you even know how long your historic data dates back to? Do you know how to access your legacy system? When you implement a new system, your legacy system, just like this. And sort of it does, but you still need to know how to turn it on, maintain it, and garner different data out of it for if you're in a heavily compliant industry. So data is really going to be one of the biggest pieces that's so important to look at. And it looks like we have some questions about data. So let me take a drink of coffee here, and then we'll go from there. So let's see. All right. So, how do you assess whether a company's data infrastructure is mature enough for AI adoption? And this is one of those that it totally depends, right? A lot of times people think of AI as these, red-eyed robots on your shop floor, and AI can be in many different cases. 9 times out of 10, when I go into an AI obsessed organization, they already are using AI through some of their ERS features. And I always joke, like, do you want me to put a sticker on this that says I use AI or something like that? And really, it's about what the goals are. So I people to forget all about AI in these conversations. And what are you trying to achieve? I'm trying to decrease downtime by 20%. Okay? So then we look at, is your data mature enough for AI adoption? Well, that's going to really come down to, do we have those sensors on those machines for predictive maintenance? Are those sensors being health checked? Are they, communicating with one another? Those are going to be big pieces with that. I think what I would say to take away from this awesome question is, do you know what your data infrastructure is? Do you have a data governance plan? Do you have data stewards? Do you have data owners? Do you have that infrastructure? Plug something in that's literally fueled by data into your architecture. A lot of things I see happening right now, that's kind of a hot trend, if you will, as hot as trends get in our industry, is the rise of kind of these niche data companies. Some of them are excellent. People have been in data for many, many years and bring out a lot of really great value, still have yet to be proven. Does that mean they won't be great someday? No, that doesn't mean that at all. You just don't want to be the first to experience if someone's able to clean and cleanse your data, optimize your data. So you just want to be sure that you understand what that looks like, and you're doing your due diligence, just like every other partner that you hire in this process. Show me references. Let me talk to those references. Have you worked with someone in my industry? Show me case studies for a project similar. It's the same sort of due diligence. But just because they're a newer company doesn't mean that it's not a risk to work with them. So this is a great opportunity to bring in some of those data partners, as long as they are good partners, right? So excellent question. Definitely would love to hear from the audience too, to see what you're thinking as far as maturity in data architecture. So these are such great questions. Thank you so much for dropping them in. Let's see here. Let's just start at the top, because again, I picked the topic and it's really what you guys want to talk about, not what I want to talk about on here, to kind of bring that out. Oh, we just did that one. Okay, cool. All right, let's see. Beyond technology, what operational changes need to happen to truly be ready for AI? And I would say, again, to reframe the question, it's not so much about operational changes. It's more of, do you know your operations? Do you know your SOPs, your standard operating processes? Do you have your process maps? A lot of times when we go into organizations, especially when they're trying to hurry into something that they're being sold as far as hype, they're like, I don't want to talk about my current processes. I want to, make all new processes that are going to match this new shiny technology. And that is just beyond a waste of time. What you need to do is think about the why we talked about, right? What are my goals? What am I trying to achieve? I'm trying to cut down time by 25%. Okay. And then what operations do I have right now that helps that? Well, I manually track maintenance for these types of machines. Okay. How do you do that? We map out the processes, and then we think of, okay, how do we implement, sensor technology, interconnected technology, to give you something in AI like predictive maintenance. So we can see, will this machine utilize? And then we need to go into the next level, that is often governance, right? Not only are you going to have to ensure that you have strong processes, but you're going to have to check that technology. AI makes mistakes all the time, right? I asked ChatGPT to give me an address yesterday. Should be easy, right? It scrapes Google and it should know that address. It got every single address I put in there wrong, right? That doesn't mean that it's terrible technology and we don't need to use it, but it does mean that we still need some strategic optimization and just overall variance tweaking to ensure that it's continuing to learn. So that's a great question. I would say we're starting with readiness of mapping your processes today. If you don't know how to do that, that's totally cool. People process map. There's workshops that you can do map per business unit. It happens all the time. Looking at implementing something like I'm going to decrease downtime. Okay, then let's start in production or manufacturing or maintenance areas to see if we can't potentially start to get some of those results. So let's hear from you guys of what you kind of think is the answer as well. So this definitely is some awesome stuff. So let's this is a great one from Avery here. At what point, what do you, geez, wow, the reading is difficult. What do you do when everyone has a different definition of a data point? That's an excellent question, especially when we see kind of this results picking, right? When we want to make a metric look really good, we often are going to create a dashboard and have that biases to tell us what we want to see. So when we go through things like data stewardship and data owners, they're in charge of making sure not only utilized correctly, also that it's defined. What does this data point mean? And how do I ensure that I explain that to everyone that is measuring against this data point? That's a huge part of master data management and data governance. And so I think that, again, a great way to start today on your data management of what is this data measuring it. Many times, big as revenue, that's measured differently in sales than it is in finance. And obviously, that's a huge misalignment for the organization. If we is 50 million over here, and new is 47 million over here. It might not sound like a huge variance, but it absolutely is to a $50 million company. And that's something that we need to really dig into. How are we measuring this? What are the data points? And who owns this process? Not just are we aligned, but who owns this process and who's going to keep us kind of in check and how we measure it. So definitely great question here. Okay, so many. These are such amazing questions. Let's see. Let's do this one. When organizations are prioritizing use cases, what criteria should they use to judge whether AI is worth the investment or not? That's a toughie just because there's so many different scenarios. So let's unpack it a little bit. When organizations are prioritizing use cases, so when we're looking at who needs this help the most quickly or something like that. I think back to one of our clients who we came in, assessed their ERP system. Their ERP system is fundamentally at risk of failing. And in the fact that it could shut down their shop floor at any time, very high risk, right? And so when they were going through their implementation for their new ERP system, they started it because they thought that would be the easiest to implement. Was that a horrible decision? No, they just didn't know that you need to start in the highest priority area, right? We need to start in supply chain to ensure that if the ERP system goes down, needs too close to it, where are we going to be fundamentally at risk of being completely unoperational? What criteria should they use to judge whether AI is worth the investment? You have to be able to know what you're looking for. I'm decreasing downtime by 25%. Great. What AI selection am I utilizing? What opportunity am I going to have to implement that? And then also, because AI is always a SaaS-based platform, it doesn't matter if it's a standalone AI module or if it's going to be embedded your system, like you're utilizing IFS for that, and you're going to utilize their predictive maintenance module or feature, right? What should they use to judge if it's worth the investment? How much does it cost? That sounds like such a simple question, but so many times businesses do not understand the total cost of ownership of their SaaS platform. Even when it's a tiny piece of your bigger architecture, right? You need to be able to understand what is the total cost of ownership and when will I get a return on my investment. For AI, that should be relatively quickly, right? Because you're implementing it, you did all your readiness checklist. It's not something like a core ERP system that takes 2 to 3 years if you're a large business to implement. So that's what you need to be able to measure. And then how are we going to continue to optimize that after the actual technology is implemented, whether you're using AI or you're able to, you guys are so funny about the stickers. We're going to make them. We've got to at this point. I feel like we've committed to this is actually AI. But this question really is what we should start with, right? We started with our why, where are we prioritizing the use case? And then what do we want to measure? Simple, stupid, I'm saying, okay, in these types of conversations. And that's a big piece that people miss because they want to overcomplicate AI. And it's really an overcomplication, right? It's an ability to understand it, go back to the basics, just as you learned in business school if you need to. Just because AI is such a huge push from board and shareholders right now does not mean that you need to sacrifice your integrity as an employee and do your job poorly or hastily, right? So great question here. Let's just keep on moving down. Well, let me check the bottom first to make sure I'm not doing it. So, hi, Dr. Fawns. Thank you so much for joining us here. If you have any K-12 insights, please feel free to share them. Let's see. Let's do this one. How do you see the balance between upskilling existing employees versus hiring new talent? Oh, let me take a drink of coffee for this one because that's deep. So I'm a bit biased on this. I think there's always new talent in the organization, but there is no replacement for experience. And I think that's where a lot of times we get confused is we need, we have new degrees coming out that are even focused in AI and data analytics. And that is awesome. That is meeting the need for the marketplace and effectively serving their students as they should be, right? But there is no greater and more valuable data set than that employee that has been on the shop floor for 30 years, probably seen, a dozen or so failed implementations, knows exactly how those machine works, probably is a pretty much predictive maintenance data set just in general, because whenever he or she hears a weird noise in that machine, they're like, you know what, that baby's going down at any point. So having the ability to leverage, and I don't even know if upskilling is the right word, because it gives this connotation that they don't already have a very valuable skill set, right? So when we want to transition how these employees work in the organization, no longer will they kind of be going around listening to the rhythm of these different machines. They'll be watching sensors on a dashboard. But that only gets us, 60% there. And the other 40% is going to come from that human operator intelligence. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to figure out where we are. We're not going to, be ego-driven executives and say, I know what skills we need. No, we're going to go talk to the end user and we're going to say, how can we better serve you and make you more efficient? We're going to take their feedback and we're going to talk to the management team. What has Jim from production seen for the last 30 years? Why is he maybe a little bit bitter about new technology and those types of things? Maybe probably because he's been burned by it a variety of different times. So in order to utilize that information and to not fail, we should probably listen to him, right? And then we ask him to be included in the core team. You know what, Jim? You've seen a lot of this. You have some great feedback. So already we're kind of attaching that new motivation for him to learn these types of new skills. Of course, he has to be willing, right? He has to want to, stay in the organization. So I think there's lots of opportunity for leveraging that insight that these employees have versus hiring new talent. There might be, a need in the organization for a fresh executive. That happens a lot of times. We've seen these executives that were brought up in the organization that are now taking over the C-suite, and they need some fresh perspective. They've worked at that business since they were 21 and they haven't really seen any outside perspective. Usually that's what the board of directors is for. But a lot of times they can bring in a fresh CIO or something like that, to help with that. That doesn't mean that that's a bad thing that they're doing that. It just means that we need to remember that there's lots of existing talent in our tenured employees. Our employees that have been there. There's nothing that drives me more crazy than counting out our boomers and our Gen Xers, that have a lot of experience in these and just saying, they're close to retirement age. That is an absolutely BS excuse for not utilizing these people and having, really poor leadership. So great question there. Definitely would love to hear from the audience as well. I feel like I'm like missing all of these comments. You guys are just so cool. Thank you so much for being here. Let's see. All righty. Let's give of your insight here. I love this one, Avery. Clear, documented process. Don't know how to work. Actually, if you don't know, again, reading is so hard. If you don't know how to work actually gets done, AI will only automate chaos. So absolutely, so true. And then I love this one too. Leadership and front lines need to agree on what outcomes matter. Otherwise, the tool becomes a distraction. And I would just add to this, it becomes a very expensive piece of overhead for the organization, right? That people create workarounds and they don't utilize. And all of a sudden, we spent $25 million on this new SaaS system. And oh, and by the way, you're not getting out of that contract. As much as you think you are absolutely not getting out of that contract. You're right. Words are hard, especially this is my first cup of coffee because we had a power outage. So I'm just starting to, get those neurons firing. So forgive me here, but these are amazing questions. And thank you for that insight. Let's do this one. From YouTube. How do you assess whether an organization is truly ready to adopt new technologies in a way that drives real results? I think the question here is that they have a clear goal. Kind of as Avery gave us those great pieces of insight there, do they understand what they're trying to measure? And have they really utilized their current legacy system to full potential? A lot of times that's where people get confused when we come in, because our first step is never towards new technology. It's okay, what do you have? What do you not have? And what are you using and what are you not using? Because really, implementing new technology is a huge undertaking. So if you can utilize what you have or, upgrade a new system, it's about really understanding what you're trying to achieve. I want less downtime. Cool. What MES do you have? Do you have an MES? Do you have an ERP that could potentially give you more of an MES feature? Do you have digital twin technology that can help with plant twins? What do you have today? And it might be, I have a 30-year-old green screen. That happens all the time. People are always shocked to hear that. We talk to people every day that still have 30-year-old green screen technology. that's not a bad thing. That means that they weren't, wasting a ton of money. I would much rather you have a 30-year-old green screen technology than have bought something that you didn't really understand and now you're stuck in a contract and we've got to go head to head with the vendor. Because believe me, if someone's been involved in those expert witness cases that go to the very, very end of that conversation, we're at litigation, which you never want to be, right? Because I promise you, they, especially big software, they have those lawyers on retainer and they will immediately, try and go head to head with you. So those are the pieces that we need to really understand, the why and the what we're buying. If they're open to that, if their leadership is humble enough to understand that this is a service project for end users, then they're ready to really have that conversation. If they come to the table saying crazy things like we need AI today and AI is our strategy for 2026, that's a sentence, not a strategy. And that is not at all, that doesn't even make any sense, right? AI is a tool that can help you get amazing results, certainly. But you still, as the business leader, need to ensure that you understand what the enterprise goals are and how AI is just a piece of that puzzle, right? It's not going to fix a broken organization. So definitely a great question here. Thank you so much. All right. Neuroplasticity, absolutely. I need an appointment with Dr. Joe Dispenza here in a minute. Let's see. These are so good. Let's do this one because this is so there's two kind of questions here that about like how would you approach disruption. So we'll kind of go on the integration front and then we'll go on this front. So how do you handle situations where leadership is on board with change, but workforce is hesitant? My gosh. So hesitant is going to be something that always happens, right? 9 times out of 10, when we go in and we have these conversations with a leadership organization or a C-suite or something like that, they're going to be like, oh, they're so excited because one person told them they're, super excited about AI. Or when they go into a town hall, which is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and people go, hey, I'm really excited for, AI because that person was the only person willing to kind of speak up in an organization of 20,000 people. Well, yeah, it's terrifying to be, in that spotlight. But the majority of the organization, you have no idea what their feelings are on that. So how do you handle those situations is you need to measure them, right? You need to go in and measure what your readiness actually is. And that's having, an unbiased third party really go in there and do these surveys on your behalf so that it's not like their manager is being like, what do you think about our current technology? And they're not telling you the truth because they're nervous about that. It's always the resistance or the, disruptors. Those people are easy. The gyms that are like this project is dumb. Those people are easy because you can hear them. But the other people that don't tell you, that just quietly quit their job, that quietly don't use the system, those people are hard to find. And there's subcultures in organizations through department. So you might have a totally different experience in finance and accounting than you're going to have in sales and marketing. And you need to know on a baseline how that works. My favorite meetings to be in are the ones where you read out organizational assessment data and the executives are shocked that people are not really willing to do this. But you know what? To give those executives some kudos, they were willing to invest in knowing that, right? They were willing to say, I really want to know what my organization thinks about this. So that's going to be the number one piece of really understanding where you're at and then how you go from there, because that data should be the foundational data of your change management plan, right? So definitely such a good question. And then Avery has the same sort of insight. Change management is important. All AI changes roles. just gonna get off right now. I'm just kidding. I'm resilient. AI changes roles, workflows, and even decisions. Teams need support, training, and building trust. And I think those tactics are so good. Support, training, and building trust, right? Those are going to be unique to each different organization, right? So each one of those are not cookie cutter solutions that we need to get from our SI that are all templated, being like, hey, fill out this worksheet, it's going to be great. No, we need to have our data from our organization. Do you go to the doctor and just pick up somebody else's prescription because they had the, same illness as you? No, because you're a different person. You look different, you weigh a different amount, you have different other medications that you're taking. So you need a prescriptive approach for you and your body. The same thing needs to go for how are we supporting these teams? How are we training these teams? I hate the word training because I think it really, just like I hate the word marketing. When training, this is not this is not, oh, I train them on the system, they're good to go. No, this is giving them access to on-demand, bite-sized materials where they can look up something. Hey, I forgot how to do this. How can I look it up on my own time? How can I learn about these opportunities with them? You need to know what your organization means for that. And if you haven't seen the Tech Ed podcasts, Dr. Fonz was in here earlier, but he talks about how difficult this is with teachers. It's absolutely very challenging when it comes to managing, a school district at that level. And a lot of times they're teaching during the day. So it's not like, hey, excuse me, students, let me figure out how to put your grades in here while you burn the classroom to the ground. That's not going to happen for them. So that environment, right, needs a totally different approach than, say, an environment where we're working in a lab and we have that time. So it says your audio is occasionally cutting out. Let's switch mics here. Thank you for telling me. So I'm not just in. Okay, let me know if that's better. Let me know if it's worse. But all of those need to be different is really what I'm saying in the strategies. So don't let your vendor and your SI be like, you know what, I've done this before, no problem. Can they give you insight? Absolutely. But you're the leader of the organization. That's going to be your responsibility. Okay. Let's get to a few more here. I'm going to... Oh, man. Okay. This I'm going to tag some people in because I actually listened to a few of these talks at conferences I've been to lately because it is a main hot topic, especially the international conferences, because it's hard to work through different regulations. So the question here is, do you believe regulation of AI will help or hinder organizations in the near term? And that is a very difficult question to ask. I think the regulation of AI, it depends on what you mean, right? We could have regulation in the terms of the business, right? So creating governance around how you utilize your AI and how you make sure that your data stays clean and unbiased. That regulation is excellent. We call that governance a lot of times, but technically it's regulation. If we're talking about policy on AI, that's much more of a complicated subject because it depends on the different governments that you're working with, like local, state, country level, federal governments. Here we call in the states. So a lot of times we look at how it's going in other areas like the EU. They've started, they've always had GDPR, which is a big piece of privacy laws and data. So if you're an international business, you need to make sure that you're following those compliance rules. And then we look at a lot of AI being developed in the States because we lack that policy. So there's a lot more that could go on. Will that always be the same? I don't know, but we'll have to see how that comes. I think the challenge with implementing AI is this moving target of compliance that you don't know what it's going to be, right? And that's what you really have to understand. But the more that you own your technology, the more flexible that can become. So, this is a greater reason to ensure that you really understand what AI you own and how you're utilizing it. If you're utilizing a platform, that should be something that you talk about in your overall demos. What does it look like if compliance change here where I'm based? What does it look like for your platform? How do you ensure that my data is protected? And then also, it's a great reason for building versus buying because you have full control over your internal technology. Will it have the same R&D budget as these bigger platforms? No. Is building expensive, and can it become this Frankenstein of a big old system? Absolutely. That's why you have to be disciplined about how you do it and really have that ability to have a feedback loop from your end users. So I think this is the question of the hour. Right now, that a lot of people are asking. We see diplomats inside of Silicon Valley trying to lobby for their countries and having this ability to be AI first. We have an AI challenge here for K through 12 students that the government is actually funding. So it's all kinds of different things it really is pushing. So not only are the boards pushing it, but governments want to be on the forefront of that as well. But they're also tasked with protecting their citizens. So that will be something that we will just kind of have to see how it goes. And as you build your technology strategy, you need to make sure that you can own that changing in compliance, especially if you're a large, more global organization. Okay, let's see. And this is a great kind of follow up question. Do you think most organizations should be building their own capabilities or relying on vendors or partners? So it totally depends on the vendor or partner. And I always give this example because I think it sums it up well when we tell a story. Coffee break. I talked to a Fortune 50 company. That's a massive company here in the US. And they said, hey, our vendors, our SIs are saying that we can utilize SAP's um, process intelligence tools for what we want to do. Do you think that's the case? And I always say, why would you ask me? You have Deloitte, Accenture, Bain, the big SIs on speed dial. So why would you need my insight from it? And they're always like, well, I know you're going to tell us the truth. Should we be using their platform or should we be building our own? At their size, they should be building their own. No doubt about it. Because those larger, bigger SIs are going to immediately take their technology and sell it to their competitor once they build it. And this is a lot of times what we see in very tricky integrations. Say you're a very specialized company, you need a specialized integration, a customization for one of your platforms. That happens all the time. If you don't have the ability to, is my audio still cutting out? Sorry. No. Okay. I think that was an old one. If you don't have the ability to control your full technology stack, that is a risk for your business, especially if you're a bigger business on that level. So we always advocate for building your internal capabilities. That's our methodology because businesses should have the right and the ability to control what they are building or making. That said, it's never a bad thing to bring in the experts and rely on vendors or partners as long as you're so clear in what that relationship means, right? They have this amazing technology. They have a great platform. This is what it's built for. Could that really help your business? Absolutely. Do you need to understand that contract back and forth? Absolutely. How do you exit that relationship if it's not working? Who owns your data? Can they block your data? I talk to a lot of people, especially when it comes to SAP ECC to S4HANA, which we're going through right now. There's a lot of people out there that are getting their data blocked because they're trying to move to different systems and things like that. And SAP is like, no, you can see that on a macro level with the SAP Celonis lawsuit, where Celonis is like, hey, I can't plug in to any of these tools because SAP won't give us the data. SAP is like, that's my platform. my data, even though it's technically the customer's data, right? But in their contracts, that's what it says. And that's it, right? Those contracts are absolutely Bible when it comes to those conversations. So I always advocate for building. You need to ensure that you understand what goes into that. But you also need to ensure that our our ability to shift if we want to is there. And that's very, very difficult to do with an outside party running your business, running your core operations, right? So it's just a consideration. You need to go through all of those different pieces. Let's do this one. This is a great question. Paid versions are also not reliable for data safety. It totally depends on the paid version, but I think the really great piece of this question or statement is that what is your data safety, right? What is your data architecture, and how do you ensure that those vendors are contractually obligated, whether it's your cloud hosting vendor, your managed service provider, your ERP service provider, doesn't matter, right? You want to be crystal clear. Can I get my data when I want it? Where is it housed? Right. And so that's such a good point. And it really depends. When we talk about open AI, I think it's worth saying anything that you put in ChatGPT, even at an enterprise license level, is not safe. Right. So please don't go in there and put your bank account information or do your P&L report. I know it's faster, that there's much better options to do that for our small to medium sized business community than putting that all in ChatGPT. It's not a closed ecosystem. You just need to ensure that you understand those tools have a use, absolutely. But when it comes to Gen AI, we're not utilizing open platforms. Okay, so let's just all make that promised trust fall to each other right now. All right, I have time for a few more, my friends here, with your great questions. Let's see. Okay, what's one business problem you actually wish AI could solve for you right now? It's so funny you ask this because I get asked by a lot of entrepreneurs, like, what is one problem in the marketplace that could be filled with AI? And they always wish that I said something cooler than I did. But usually it's more of the functional pieces in organizations. So I think the one business problem right now would be just standardization of operating procedures. If you were able to have an AI system running in the background, so we're looking at, are we actually utilizing standardized operating procedures? One, and then two, how do we enhance those on behalf of our employees? It just is. It's so critical that we're not watchdogging our employees because it's weird, but we're trying to enhance the way that they do business. Is there going to be employees that don't, fit the integrity of our organization? Absolutely. So should those employees be exited throughout the organization? Yes. I'm not saying it's your job, to baby adults. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying there's an opportunity to see if we have stand SOPs throughout the board, and if those are being met and where they can be improved. And that's one business problem that I wish you could plug AI in. I'm sure there's options out there for these types. It would be great if they were really dedicated and coded for the business, not outside platforms, right? Outside platforms, can they learn your business? For sure. Absolutely. There's a lot of BI tools out there that can learn your business, but they're not coded on behalf of your business. And that's what I would love to see more of in the marketplace. I'm super curious, Avery, what you'd like to see, being an AI engineer yourself, because you probably know way better than me. So, all right. Let's see. Trust on 3. Okay. Let's see. Let's do a few more here. All right. Where do you see the biggest mismatch? Don't even say it. Between what boards expect from technology investments and what actually gets delivered. Oh man, how much time do you have? Okay, so let's start at the beginning here. Boards don't understand technology. And that's not saying boards are stupid or we hate them or they're terrible people. That's not their job, is to understand the nitty gritty details of tech. What they do need to understand is the vision of the organization and what they're trying to achieve. So when there is a technology investment, that's where the executive sponsor really comes into play. CIO, CTO, CDO, whatever, right? And their job is to be the liaison to the board, explaining it at a very high level. Our goal is to reduce downtime by 25%. Super cool, right? Okay, board, here's how we're doing this. Week 3 through 6, we installed sensors. This is the preliminary data we got. This is the measurement dashboard we're using. Right now, we have 6 of 26 machines active on this, and we've decreased downtime already by 2.5%. That's what they need to be reading out. We expect to receive this investment through X date. It has cost this much. Some, issues that we're dealing with. Here we need your support. That's really what they need to be focused on. Things break when that CIO, CTO, whatever, doesn't know how to play that role. And that's a hard role to play. I'm not at all downplaying it, because it absolutely is, because they're probably going to ask questions you know the answer to, and you're going to have to be like, let me ask my engine on that. That takes a very confident CIO to say, I have no idea what that answer to that question is. Let me go ahead and ask my team this. Period. Not full in with some fluff and not trying to say, I'm the smartest person in the room. That's where we get in trouble, is when we start to fill in stories. Then we get a technology that's delivered that isn't at all what the business needs. It's what the board wanted. And that's where we see weak leaders. So real with you, is they weren't able to stand up to the board and say, you know what, I hear you. You want AI? That's awesome. We've got this on our roadmap right now. In order to get there, I need an investment in IT infrastructure. And here's why, right? And if the board of directors, as they should be, are reasonable people that have built businesses before, they should be seeing that. If they're not, you should get the hell out of that organization. Great question. Okay, one more. Let me see. This is a great piece of insight from Avery. I'm just going to read it real quick if I can. So fingers. The problem usually isn't resistance, but trust. The workforce wants to know, how does this change impact me, my job, my day-to-day? Leaders often talk about transformation in abstract terms, but operators live in the details. Absolutely. This is so, so true. And I see this all the time happened with failed implementations, is they can't get that trust back. Once it's gone, the organization doesn't think you can do it again, because maybe you can't, right? So you're going to have to run up that sandhill to try and get to the top. It's going to be much harder than, slowly hiking that mountain and listening to people along the way. So this is great insight. Let's see. All right, let's do this last one, and our last one I'll wrap up. Let's see if I can keep it to a minute. Yeah, right. When have I ever kept an answer to a minute? Do you believe the biggest barrier to value from AI is technical, organizational, people, leadership, culture? I would love to hear from the audience on this one, but 100% organizational. There's no issue on the technical side, right? Technically, anything can be implemented in an organization as long as it can functionally work. But are we going to use it? Are people terrified of it? Not understand the purpose of it? Are people's jobs going to change because of AI? 100%. Is that going to be an easy transition? No. That's people's livelihood. That's their vulnerable, job. That's how they feed their families. It's one of the most important necessities in their lives. And you're just playing around with it. And as someone in leadership, you need to be able to understand that. So definitely would love to hear from the audience on that one, but I'm all in organizational leadership and culture. So with that, we got to wrap up today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'd be so interested to hear if you like this format, or if you prefer, the bite-sized guests, which of course we have lots of fun guests coming up in the next couple weeks. But this has been something that's been a fun format on TikTok because, again, it doesn't matter what I say. It matters the insights we share as a community because each business is different and they have the opportunity to know that there's options, not just what their vendor is kind of forcing down their throat. So, with that, I invite you to let me know how you liked this today. I'll go back in, of course, in the comments as I always do. And then hopefully I'm off next week, but I will see you the following week. And I'm excited to, engage with you again. So thanks so much, everyone, for your time. I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday or a great Tuesday afternoon or evening. And I will see you next time. Thanks so